Hello, I'm John Cannon. I'm an insurance broker with Pufalt-Pauley Insurance Agency in Belleville, Illinois. I am also a pastor and have been for more than 28 years now. I'm currently serving at Victory Church here in O'Fallon, Illinois, which is a ministry that my wife and I planted here in 1999 as church planters and started the work where I'm currently serving as senior pastor. And today I just want to reach out to pastors in this video, into ministries and churches and church boards and trustees and individuals that handle the business side of the church, primarily dealing with church insurance. And today I want to talk to you about 15 important things that you need to have on your church insurance policy. And a lot of pastors are unaware of some of these coverages that you need. And so I want to help you minimize the risk so that your ministry can continue to flourish throughout the next 20, 30, 50, 100 years if the Lord tarries is coming. So real quickly, I'm going to hit about 15 different areas of services or protection that you need on your church insurance policy, okay? If you remember, criminals back in the day have been known to run into a church yelling sanctuary to avoid capture, partly because churches have always been a place of safety and security. Well, the reality is our world has changed, and our world involves risk, and churches are not immune to the risk that are out there today. So therefore, knowing how to properly insure your church will give you confidence that an unforeseeable occurrence will not end your ministry. So I want to hit about 15 different things that every church insurance policy should have, okay? So I'm going to hit these quickly. I won't be able to unpack them in great detail, but I just want to hit them real quickly and try to roll through it with a brief explanation of each one. So jot these down, if you will. The very first thing, number one, that you need on your church insurance policy is protection against legal action. This is commonly known as liability insurance. The reality is that every church is at risk to a lawsuit by both its members and from guests or other individuals. The basic church insurance coverage needed is called general liability insurance, and that general liability insurance has two parts. Part number one is if someone claims they were injured at your church on your property in or outside of your church building. A general liability policy will provide insurance for a covered claim of bodily injury. An example of this could be someone slipping and falling inside the church building and holding the church liable. A second type of liability insurance you need is if someone claims that their property was damaged. So the second part of a general liability policy is coverage for accusations of property damage. An example of this could be if the church is leasing the building they're currently worshiping in and serving in, and the landlord states that the church caused damage to the building. Well, you need some type of insurance against that. Number two type of insurance you need is church insurance for your property that the church owns. Now, every church needs coverage for the property that is owned by the church. This could include the actual church building, or if the church is leasing the location, the property inside the building, such as the chairs and the furniture and the musical equipments and the such. So let's talk first of all about the church building itself. Church building insurance covers events like fire or wind that could cause complete or partial damage to the church. And the way the premium is determined is based on the square footage of the church building itself, the construction, the year it was built, location, etc. For older churches where updates or renovations were done, this is very important that you document all of that on your church policy. Secondly, also for items in the church, this is called your business personal property. Imagine, if you will, if you take your church building and you turned it upside down and you shook it. Everything that falls out should be covered under a separate limit. That is the combined value of all of those items. We call that business personal property. Property that the church owns, that's not the building. You turn it upside down, you shake it, everything that would fall out. Office furniture, sound equipment, chairs, pews, organs, pianos, drums, guitars, anything that would fall out of the building needs to be insured. Also, there needs to be insurance for items that leave the church sometimes. Now, this is property that is owned by the church, but it leaves the church building. This is what we would call an inland marine policy. It is moving. It's outside of the building. This would be portable sound equipment. This would be portable computers, or anything that would move outside of the building that you would take to another event. For any items that leave the church grounds, that's what this would cover. They need to be covered under this inland marine policy. Number 3, coverage for, unfortunately, you got to have this today. If you do not, you need this, Pastor. Coverage for accusation of sexual abuse and or molestation. Any organization that works with children has the potential to be accused of a crime of sexual nature. And all it takes is an accusation. So therefore, pastor, churches, you must protect yourself in this area. An accusation can be made regardless of whether any wrongdoing ever occurred, and the church must defend itself in this particular situation. So therefore, if someone claims they were sexually abused, accusations of a sexual nature are not covered under a general liability policy. Therefore, they require a separate policy. And this is a coverage that no church insurance program can afford to be without. Sadly, the statistics of child sexual abuse are staggering, with 93% of sex offenders describing themselves as religious. Number 4, you need protection for counselors. Pastor, do you give counsel to your members? Obviously, you do from the pulpit every Sunday, but what about those counseling sessions? Do you have others in your church that engage in counseling sessions with your parishioners or individuals outside of your particular church? So many ministers offer counseling for church members, which is a great thing. Matter of fact, I have a degree in pastoral counseling, a major in that degree, so I understand this part. You need to insure yourself, and a lot of churches have counselors that are on staff that are offering counsel to their members or individuals in the community. So allegations made against a counselor, understand those are not covered under your general liability policy, and they must be insured under a separate church insurance policy. If someone claims that they were injured through counseling, so they took your advice, they took your counsel, and they claim that it caused them harm, as with coverage for accusations of sexual abuse, a counselor does not have to have done anything wrong to be faced with legal action. By making sure that your church is covered, you'll gain peace of mind in knowing that you are defended and that you are well covered with your counsel. Number 5, coverage for employee injuries. Any organization that has employees, whether they're full-time or part-time, they need a workers' compensation policy, commonly known as a work comp policy. Churches are no different. There are state laws that varies, and therefore the legal requirements to purchase work comp varies based on your state. So all the state laws are different, so be sure that you research that and you know. So even if you are not legally required to purchase this coverage in your state, you can still be held liable for a work-related injury, even with just one employee. And the lack of a legal requirement to buy work comp does not remove the church from the liability or the risk that is there. Number 6, protection in the event of a flood. If a flood occurs, the damages will not be covered under the church's property policy. To obtain coverage for a flood, your church will need to purchase a separate flood insurance policy. Flood insurance is administered by the National Flood Insurance Program. It's important to get a flood policy in place before the storm, obviously. So if you're in an area where you're likely to have some type of a flood, you need to seriously consider this. Most flood policies do not go into effect until 30 days after the purchase. For this reason, it's really important to get a flood insurance policy in place long before bad weather is looming or coming your way. Number 7, insurance for accusations made by employees. When a church employee makes an accusation against the church, you need to be prepared by purchasing a policy called Employment Practices Liability Insurance. You will be. This is also known as EPL insurance. And accusations that can be covered are as the following: sexual harassment, wrongful termination if you have to let someone go, discrimination, retaliation, and the list goes on and on. As with many other church insurance coverages, an allegation can be made even if nothing wrong ever happened. And claims made involving employees can be very large, and a general liability policy does not provide coverage for this. Number 8, special event coverage. Now, this is one pastor in churches that I think you really need to pay attention to: special event coverage. Many churches hold special events from time to time, such as Easter egg hunts or fall festivals and the such. And depending on the nature of the event, it may or may not be covered under your current policy. So think about the location of the event. For events occurring off the church property, it's very likely that you will need a special event policy to have coverage. Aside from location, there are many other factors that will determine whether your current church insurance policy will cover your special event or if a separate policy is needed. So therefore, it's best to make sure that you're working with a church insurance specialist, or at least an insurance agent that is aware of the risk that churches face at the earliest planning stages of an event. So be sure to reach out to an advisor in that area, which I encourage you to reach out to me to help you in that event. Okay? Number 9, here's another one: insurance for missions. Does your church go on mission trips? Missions can present a variety of church insurance needs, foreign and domestic. So you need to think about that. If the mission your church is taking part in or sponsoring is outside the United States, you will most likely need a separate policy for that mission. There's worldwide liability as well. And most liability policies only provide coverage for claims that occur inside the United States. So if your church is conducting missions outside of the United States, you'll need a policy that will provide coverage for that. Now, a lot of denominations provide that for churches and mission trips, so you need to check in and find out what's available for you there. Also, the travel and the medical insurance. And missionaries traveling outside the United States will need access to medical coverage in the event of an emergency. Also, unfortunately, you need to consider kidnap and ransom protection. For travel in some developing countries, coverage for kidnap and ransom is very important to provide reimbursement from losses associated with kidnap and extortion and hijacking. And we've seen that on the news. And so you need to cover yourself there. Number 10, covering your church van or bus. Now, this is a sticky subject here. Every church that has a van or a bus needs a special policy to make sure they are covered. The policy that covers your church van or your bus has 2 parts. A, coverage for other people and property if there is an accident. If your church or van or bus is in an accident that is your fault and causes injury to another person or damages their property, this portion of the policy would provide coverage. The second part is coverage for damage to your bus or van if it is your fault. This coverage is often called comp and collision. You're familiar with that on your personal policy. You also need that on your bus or van. It's called full coverage, and you're familiar with that, okay? So you need to be sure you have that. Now, churches who use 15-passenger vans are at the most risk because these vehicles were originally designed to carry cargo instead of people, and they do not have many safety features. And sadly, rollover accidents are quite common and often involve fatal injuries. So be sure you have the right insurance if you have a church van or a church bus, okay? Number 11, protections for accusations against your church board. A very common type of legal action taken against churches is when a claim is made against a church's board of directors. This could be the deacons, the elders, the trustees, whoever generates and comes together for that board. So the church insurance coverage for this is called the Directors and Officers Insurance, and it's extremely important that these individuals are covered in your church ministry. Coverage for behavior. Basically, this church insurance policy covers your church if the board makes a decision such as appropriation of funds and a church member or other party sues as a result. You need to have that coverage. As with other coverages, you do not have to have done anything wrong. In modern America, anyone can sue anybody for anything. Matter of fact, I love the United States of America, called USA, but unfortunately we have transitioned to Sue SA, where everyone is looking to sue someone for something, and the church is not exempt from this. So what does it mean for your church? It means you have to protect yourself with the right kind of insurance. If you have any questions, reach out to me. I'll be glad to help you in all of these areas. Number 12, coverage for large claims. Now, not only are the number of lawsuits higher today than ever before, but the settlement amounts are growing larger as well. It's unbelievable. So therefore, you may need to consider what's called an umbrella policy. And there is no more cost-effective way to increase your liability coverage in the event of a large claim than an umbrella policy. Number 13, protection if your computers are breached. Now think about this. This is kind of obviously a different day and age that we live in. Now here's a quote. Think about this. Data breaches only happen in large corporations. Right or wrong? What do you think? Well, the answer is wrong. Now, we hear about the big organizations, the big data breaches on the news, and they largely focus on these large companies. But the reality is that most of these crimes are targeted at small businesses and nonprofits, such as churches. So any church with a connection to the internet is at risk for a data breach. If any member or employee's private information is stored in the church computer system, the church is liable. Think about first party and third party. First party is this coverage is for the employee personal information. Third party is likely even more important than first party, and this coverage is for the members or the guests' private information that the church has on file. And some churches utilize closed social networking sites that can sometimes be used for tithe and other offerings. For any church utilizing a site like this, coverage for data breach is even more important. And tragically, criminals actually view churches as easy targets for data theft. So you may want to look into cyber insurance. Number 14, coverage if money is stolen. We take up tithes. We take up offerings. A lot of our folks do give online now, which is why you need that cyber protection, but we still pass the plate on Sunday morning. What's happening to those dollars and those checks and those offerings that are given? A crime policy is a very important church insurance coverage that protects against the loss of money or securities. Your property policy will not likely provide any coverage in the event of a criminal act here, so you've got to purchase this policy. A crime policy can cover theft or burglary from an unknown party. Also, think about employee dishonesty. Now, sadly, theft sometimes is perpetuated by an employee or representative of the church. And people in the church often dig very deep to give and make amazing sacrifices. And every church should make sure that their gifts and their tithes and their offerings are protected from thieves. Number 15, coverage for church volunteers. Think about this one. Volunteers are often the lifeblood for any nonprofit, including churches. For this reason, churches need to be especially concerned with making sure that the volunteers, are covered for any liability. Think about if a volunteer is hurt. Your general liability policy may not provide coverage for claims involving volunteers. In many states, churches are not exempt from work comp coverage for volunteers, so you need to check into that. Churches must be diligent in making sure their insurance needs are properly placed. So therefore, a custom church insurance program written by a church insurance agent or agency will help assure that your ministry will be able to continue even if the unforeseen happens. Well, I'm proud to say that I do specialize in church insurance. I know firsthand the needs and the experiences that are out there that pastors and churches and parishioners are faced with in this day and age. So I want you to reach out to me. Give me a call at 618-233-0034. That's at our church office. Ask for John, and I want to be able to help you. Pastor, I want to see you in ministry and flourishing for many years to come. So be sure that you are protecting yourself, your ministry, your volunteers, your parish from the risk that are out there in our day. God bless you. Reach out to me if I can serve you in any way.